Hello, everyone. Welcome to our first session of the Signals Notebook Quarterly Connect Community Series. My name is Lauren Orth, and I will be your moderator for this session. This ongoing Signals Notebook Community Series will be an opportunity for you to learn about newly added Signals Notebook functionality and hear how others are using Signals Notebook to improve productivity and data transparency through enhanced collaboration. Our upcoming 2022 sessions will be hosted on August 24th and November 16th. We want to keep this series as interactive as possible, so please submit future topics in the chat box or reach out to us in between sessions with your input. A couple quick housekeeping reminders before we start. We will briefly open it up to questions after each presentation. We will also have ample time at the end of the presentation to open it for additional questions and office hours. Please submit your questions through the questions box located on the right-hand side of your screen. Ann Ballard, product manager at
Revvity Signals,
will run the Q&A sessions. Lastly, this webinar is being recorded and the recording will be shared with all attendees in the upcoming days. Let's jump right into it. Here's our agenda for today. Today's agenda includes parallel experiments with Jinsu Kim, Signals inventory, find, request, and track materials within your ELN, presented by Jeff Coomer. And at the end, as mentioned, we will have ample time for questions and open office hours. Let's take a look at our first presenter of the day. Our first presentation of the day is Parallel Experiments with Jinsu Kim, Field Application Scientist at
Revvity Signals.
Jinsu received his PhD in organic chemistry at UC Santa Cruz and brings over a decade of experience as a scientist.
Revvity.
Prior to his current position, he was a scientist at Molecular Dynamics, Ionis Pharmaceuticals, and Moffitt Cancer Center, Kala Pharmaceuticals, and TrueCode Gene Repair. He has worked in therapeutic areas including oncology, ocular disease, and gene editing. Jinsu, thank you so much for joining us today. I'll hand it over to you to walk through the agenda and jump into Notebook.
Perfect. Thank you, Lauren. Appreciate that. And thank you to all of you for joining us for our Signals Notebook Quarterly Connect. What I'm going to be talking about today is parallel experiments. And so what that entails is different ways that you are optimizing chemistry. Now, one of those might be a substrate exploration where you're generating analogs off of a similar type of scaffold. And the other scenario that comes in very often is when you're running the same reaction, the same starting materials, but optimizing the conditions, trying to really get the most out of that. And we're going to touch on both of those. They leverage different features that are contained within the notebook. And as I go through the course of the demonstration, we'll talk about both of those. There we go. We should all be seeing my my notebook here. Okay. Now, as you all know, Signals Notebook has a really great ability to capture your chemical reactions here. And what you see here is a very, kind of standard peptide coupling here. I'm forming the amide using these coupling groups. I've got the stoichiometry grid down here mapping out everything that I want to know about the reaction. And then the procedure down here captures all of the details around the specific experimental procedure that I followed here. So this is all really nicely built. It's great. But what happens, like I said, when you're building a library of analogs? So maybe I like this peptide nucleic acid, but I've got many other kinds of nucleotides that I want to add in here. I want to get in my purines as well, and maybe I've got some modified pyrimidines or something like that. What do? Something simpler than generating this reaction over and over for 20 different analogs that I might be building. Is there a simpler way that I can do something like that? And so the answer to that is yes. We have created what we call a parallel experiment. When I go into the Add New Content button, as you know, this is where you can create experiments. Parallel experiments are actually a distinct entity, and so you will see why. But when you go into parallel experiments, it looks just the same. You're brought to the creation wizard where you're prompted to fill out whatever you would like. So I'll say amide analog library, and then I have to assign it to a particular notebook. I might have other fields that I want to assign these particular things to. I can go ahead and do that. Nothing unfamiliar here to those of you that use Signals Notebook already. But when I get into creating the parallel experiment, you will see that it has a distinct look and a couple of unique pieces. The ChemDraw window, again, very standard, nothing surprising here. The procedure is also already populated, but I have the enumerator here, and it's saying I don't see a generic reaction. Let's talk about that. So in the example that I showed earlier, I was talking through an amide coupling, and I said, what happens when you're using that amide coupling over and over, but you're modifying the substrates a little bit? You're generating a novel library of compounds. What you can actually do here is create R groups. And so I'll start there with my carboxylic acid, and then we will put our amine in here, R3, there we go, create a reaction. Let me rotate this a little bit, oh, wrong way. And I'll bring that over. Oh, sorry. And then let's clean that up a bit. There we go. So I have my generic amide coupling here, and I've got all the pieces that I want. Now, I might want to add in things like the specific coupling reagents. Maybe I'm using the same ones, and so again, leverage this very familiar quick add. I'm going to put EDC up and over that arrow, and I've also got a base that I need to add, triethylamine. There we go. Throw that up and over the arrow. And now I've mapped out pretty much everything that I've got. I've got variable carboxylic acids. I've got variable amines. I'm creating a different library of all of these things. Here we are down here in the stoichiometry grid. I can actually continue filling this out, despite the fact that there isn't a specific R1, R2 for the reactants here. I can go ahead and fill this out. So maybe slight excess of the amine, large excess of the base, and then slight excess of the coupling agent. And we'll just say in general, it's a 50 milligram scale, where it's going to, again, leverage this automatic calculation in the stoichiometry grid. Continue filling this thing out, DMF, 5 mils, temperature, room temperature, 1 hour. There we go. And now I've mapped out everything about this exploratory reaction that I want to capture. Moving down here into the procedure, again, using the smart text, I'm able to pull things out from the stoichiometry grids. I'll go into reactant, where you see I can choose reactant 1 or 2. Again, these are ambiguous right now, but let's go ahead and assign them. The carboxylic acid gets premixed with the coupling agent, and then you dissolve them in the DMF, things like that. So you can continue to go ahead and fill this thing out. There we are. And now we get to the interesting part. This is what we call the internal enumerator. So you see how at the beginning it said there was no generic group found in that reaction. It didn't see anything, but now there's a warning, right? Or there's a flag. What that means is there has been a change. So it says refresh this, because now I see that you've done something in that ChemDraw window. I want to see if it's something I can work with. Let's hit that refresh. And now it does recognize something. It says, okay, I see that you have added some R groups into here. So what do you want me to do about that? The first thing is, here are my carboxylic acids. I can add compounds a couple of different ways. I can manually draw them in. So here's my R1, and I say, oh, actually, I want this cyclohexane carboxylic acid, add it. And there we go. I've got entry number 1. And then I can just continue iterating on this if I want. The other thing that you probably noticed when I got into that pull down menu is if you have an SD file, let's say I'm not doing something that's only 4 or 5 different, kind of starting materials. Maybe I've got 20 or 50 or 100, something like that. I might have an SD file of those that I want to add rather than drawing them one by one. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I do happen to have a couple of different SD files. So here's my R1, add to the list. And there we go. It has automatically populated all of those. I'm going to do the same thing with the amine. Let me go ahead and add an SD file. I'm going to pull that up again, and I've got my SD files here. There we go. Add to list. Seem to have confused my system. Let's try that again. Add SD file. Let's go ahead and drop this in. Here we go. Add to list. There we go. Better, better. And now I have my amines. And I'm sure that you have already noticed exactly what you're supposed to notice, which is that there is a flag here on this particular starting material because it is a piperazine. And so it is letting you know, hey, there are multiple sites for reactivity here. Do you want us to use both? The default is that yes, we will use both, but maybe in this case, this particular amine is not available because it's too sterically crowded. So let me go ahead and unclick that and choose the sites. And now I've just chosen the specific one that I want to use in my particular experiment. 202, let's try that again. Choose the sites. There we go. Well, let's just leave it at 2 of 2 for now. Okay, now I've mapped out my generic reaction. I have captured the stoichiometry in general of the things that I'm running. And I have mapped out the smart text, what's going to go in. Again, I leverage the generic terms. Let's go ahead and put reactant 2 in here so that you can see that. And then I have defined my R groups. The last thing that's left for the enumerator is to go ahead and enumerate. And it asks me, what do you want to do? What do you want to bring over? Before I do that, let's talk about this. What's going to happen is that the enumerator will run every iteration of these carboxylic acids and amines, and it will generate a sub-experiment for each one of those. When I go into the summary reviews tab, you'll see that there's nothing in here, right? Because I haven't generated any sub-experiments yet. But it gives me the opportunity to look at all of the output for each possible combination of these. So when I do go into the enumerator, I decide that yes, I want a procedure attached to each one of those sub-experiments, and then I'm going to hit enumerate. And this goes ahead and it starts to run this matrix for me. In this case, it's going to be a 6 by 6 because I have the 6 carboxylic acids. I have 5 amines, but this one has dual reactive sites, and so it actually counts as a second entry. So I'm going to get 6 of 6. There we go. I got 10 of 30. And then it's going to keep on running these 10 of 30. Maybe it did actually accept the one that I chose and it just wasn't showing for me for whatever reason. 20 experiments, 30. So like I said, it's running all of these for me. The bigger the matrix, obviously, the longer it takes for this to run. But now I've got 30 experiments, right, for each of these. When I now go into summary reviews, here we are. You see, I've got these sub-experiments and every possible combo of that cyclohexane carboxylic acid with all of my amines is in here. Then it moves on to the next substrate, that benzoic acid, right? And then we get into the nicotinic acid. All of these things, I have got 30 different sub-experiments. So it ran every iteration of carboxylic acid and amine combination. When I click into these sub-experiments, they're treated just like that singleton experiment that I showed you earlier, where I've got my ChemDraw, and note here that it has picked out the specific starting materials. It knows that it was the cyclohexane carboxylic acid and the cyclobutanamine here, and put in their proper mole values, even though it just said reactant 1, reactant 2 in the generic reaction. And then down here, all of this is properly mapped, and in the smart text, it did inherit the proper terms from that internal enumerator. And if I need to add any data to this, like an HPLC or a mass spec or some type of NMR, whatever I want to do, it functions again just like a singleton experiment. The difference here is that because I'm running this screen of 30 different reactions that are all kind of under this umbrella, they're all nicely contained in this larger entity called a parallel experiment. Now that gives you access to each of the sub-experiments. Maybe I want a different type of kind of summary view. I want to know everything about all the reactants that went into these. I have a separate table just to look at all the reactants. And so what were the starting materials in this one? Cyclohexane carboxylic acid and the cyclobutanamine, azetidine here, right? And so this is where all the starting material summary is. What did you start with here? And how much of that did you put in? What were the equivalents? Things like that. And then down at the bottom, I have got my product summary, where here's the reaction, this is the theoretical mass, and then over here are all of the various products if I wanted to look at them. And you see here that it's calculated the theoretical mass, and so if I want to put my actual mass, let's say I got 60 mgs, it's going to go ahead and start calculating yields for me. So in this one, I got 55 mgs, right? 60 again. And so there we go. Now I can have this nice table that you can export either as an SD file, a CSV, whatever you like. You can actually just copy and paste this directly into Excel if you want to do that. But that is the case for making a library of analogs that are structurally related but leverage a similar or even an identical type of reaction in order to achieve these. That is use case number one. What I'm going to get into now is the opposite use case. What happens when the starting materials and the product are the same, but this is what varies, right? The things that I'm adding in, the solvent temperature, the different bases, maybe catalysts, something like that, the runtime, even those sorts of things. How do I map that out? Well, that's actually a different use case that we're going to use. So I will go to parallel experiment, and I've got a template just for this. And again, I will put let's say I'm running a Suzuki coupling, right? And create. Now it's going to look fairly familiar. I actually don't necessarily need the ChemDraw section here. Now the external enumerator, what it is basically you are going to have a pre-populated CSV or some other type of file. So mine looks like this. I've got reactant number 1, reactant number 2, the products, and then I'm varying the catalysts, the bases. You can see I've got a couple of different solvents, a couple of different temperatures, these types of things. I can actually import this directly into the notebook and use this to populate the enumerator. So it's going to say, hey, do you want to drag a file right into here? Yes, I do. I have my Suzuki enumeration. There we go. And it looks a little bit different, but it functions, really kind of similarly. So I'm going to add a reactant, and it's reactant 1. Now you have a couple of different options here. If you don't have a CSV, go ahead and just choose fixed value, and it allows you to draw in reactant number 1. It will accept that. In my case, I do happen to have a value for reactant 1. It's just a column matching exercise. What is the format? Mine's actually in Smiles, but it'll accept any of these particular chemical languages. And there we go. I've got my phenylboronic acid. Now here is where I can begin to input things. Yes, I know that I'm going to go at roughly a 50 milligram scale. So let's go ahead and do 50 mgs. There we go. That is reactant number 1. And any other kinds of things that you want to put in here that are relevant to this, you have the ability. And obviously, if you have a column that contains information, you can just match it in the same way that I did. I'm going to add reactant number 2 as well. This is also in a Smiles format. There we go. Now I've got my aryl iodide, and I am going to, again, choose a fixed mass. Let's go with 100 milligrams on this one. There we are. And in this case, I'm exploring a couple different catalysts. I'm changing the bases up a little bit. And so I've got more things that I need to add. I've got another reactant in this case. And again, feel free to draw it if you like, but I've got a catalyst that's drawn out again in a Smiles format. And it recognized that. I have my palladium ACAC right there, and I will add one more for the base. And there we go. I've got sodium carbonate. Again, if you want to put in values here for the stoichiometry, you can do that. And then you just move across the table. So I go to products and I say, hey, add the product. There we go. That is in a Smiles format. There is the coupled product that I want. Okay, great. Solvents, am I changing those? Yes, I am. Now, obviously, if you're not choosing solvents, you don't have to populate this field. But I am changing the solvents, and I can choose, again, a fixed value. It's going to be 5 mils. And then finally, under reaction conditions, I can change the pressure, the temperature, or the reaction time. I am altering the temperature, and that will be in degrees Celsius. So I have now mapped out everything, right? I've got my starting materials, I've got the products, the different solvents, and the conditions. These things are all laid out in that CSV file, and now I just need to enumerate it. And it's going to ask me again, what do you want me to bring over into the sub-experiment summary? So let's enumerate that. And that is done. Oh, no, it's not, sorry. And this one, I only had 8 lines in it, and so it's just going to enumerate the 8 that I have defined in here, right? So however many conditions you want to run, make sure that your CSV matches that. And then when I go into the experiment summaries, there we go. So I've got this first coupling with the palladium ACAC and sodium carbonate. Then I've got the second coupling with the same catalyst, but now potassium phosphate as the base. These 2 reactions, I switch the catalyst, where I've got the Perlman's catalyst with sodium carbonate and potassium phosphate. And then further down, I go into changing things like the temperatures, the conditions, things like that. So I click into sub-experiment 1, and you see down here, THF, room temperature, palladium ACAC, sodium carbonate. I go to experiment 2, and again, palladium ACAC, but this time with a potassium phosphate, this time in NMP at 75 degrees, continuing on that same scale. Now I've got Perlman's catalyst, again, THF, room temperature. And when I go back from these sub-experiments, I have got my reaction summary, the overall reaction summary, and then again, a product table here if I want to see that. So I can map out all the specific products that I want to see, put the actual mass so I can calculate yields if I want 75 milligrams. It will automatically calculate the yield of that reaction for me. And again, in each of the sub-experiment summaries, you're able to put whatever supporting documentation that you want for that specific sub-experiment. But in terms of screening the specific conditions, you're able to house all of the various iterations of this reaction into one nice tidy container, rather than having 8 separate experiments where you're just changing one of these things. Okay, so that is a very, very quick overview of parallel experiments and the 2 different common use cases that people come up against, where you're making analog libraries or where you're doing a reaction type of optimization. I'm going to go ahead and leave it there, and I will open the floor for any questions at this point.
All righty, so we've got some questions coming in. Let's see. We have one question. How could I transfer the structure from ChemDraw to the summary sheet and get the molecular weight?
Right. So the when you draw something in the ChemDraw section, as you know, it automatically calculates things like the product mass and things like that. Those things, when you do the enumeration, automatically get brought over into the sub-experiment. And so when I go into this sub-experiment, you'll see that the product here does already have the molecular weight and the theoretical mass based on the stoichiometry that I defined up here. Now, as to the question about how do I transfer that into the product table, that also automatically happens. So these are all things that I templated out. When you're building the parallel experiments, you build out the sections that go into here. Now you can add content here just the same way you do a standard experiment. I can add a type of sub-experiment summary if I want, but I built out that product table specifically for that. Now this one might happen to not have a structure in it. Oh yeah, I must not have put the structure. Now I should be able to configure that and maybe put something like the preview, something like that. That I wonder if that's actually going to show though in this point. Oh yeah, there we go. So yeah, I just had to turn that on. It wasn't turned on, but here is the product table. And again, it brought over the molecular weight and the theoretical yield, so I can just go ahead and add that. But this is something that you configure, and it automatically inherits that information based on what it gets from the enumerator.
As a bit of a follow-up question, there were some questions around where you get the reaction summary and product summary tables into the experiment.
Great question. So again, that was a level of configuration. I built a template, but supposing I didn't have something. So in this case, you may remember that in the previous experiment where I did the analogs, I had a reactant summary, right, for the starting materials. And then I have a product summary. But in the external enumerator where I did the conditions optimization, I do not have a reactant summary. I have an overall reaction summary, but not a reactant summary. If I want to add a table, let's say that this particular template didn't contain it, but I like that information, I can add a sub-experiment summary. And then I say, okay, this is my reactant summary, and I can configure the columns. So what do I want to see? I don't want to see products in this case. I want to see the reactants, and I want to see between 1 and 4 different reactants, right? Because this particular reaction had the 2 starting materials, right, for the coupling itself, but also catalysts and bases. And so here is where I just choose the things that I want to see. Oh, do I want to see the structures of all the starting materials? Yes. Do I want to see their reactant number? Sure. Let me go ahead and see that. And then I want to see maybe the mass that was added. Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. What were the number of moles? These types of things. So you just choose the things that matter to you and then save it, and it'll update that summary table for you. So here is the sub-experiment, here's the preview, and then here are my starting materials: phenylboronic acid, my aryl histidine, palladium acac, sodium carbonate. So these are things that you can build out as well if the administrator doesn't already include these in the template for you.
Excellent. I think we probably have time for 2 shorter questions, and don't worry everyone, we will be revisiting questions. We have a much more detailed question time period at the end of the presentation. So just a couple of shorter questions. Can the different fields have a template mapping for the different values so you don't need to do it in every experiment?
So can the different fields have a different mapping? I guess, is that in reference to the summary where I had to go and configure the columns and select everything? Or is it more at the enumerator level where you might want to change the fields? I might need a clarification on that one.
All right, so Carolina, if you wouldn't mind getting us a little more details into the question pane, that would be really helpful. And finally, since we're talking about the summary tables, what about multiple products? Will you be able to see those in the preview as well?
Yes, so in my particular use cases, I made it very simple where there is a singular product. Now, supposing there were side products available, so something like that, you can always, as you know, you can draw whatever you want. So if I were to let me just draw another side, let me just draw something, R4, something like that. It will take that because as you saw in the sub-experiment summary tables, I can choose what I see. And so if I choose, hey, I want to see products and there are maybe 2 different products, I just say there's between 1 and 2. If I choose to only see one, I'll see the primary one. But if I say I want to see both products, I can choose that. And then you see here again, I have the ability to map those out however I need. So yes, you can do it. I just kept it to the simplest, most straightforward use case.
All righty, well, thank you. I think I'm going to turn things back over to Laura so we can carry on with the presentations. And as a reminder, we will be revisiting all of your questions at the end for a more detailed Q&A session.
Great. Thank you, Anne. Thank you, Jinsu. Love the questions coming out. We will now pivot to our second agenda item of the day. This second presentation is Signals Inventory, Find, Request, and Track Materials within your ELN, presented by Jeff Coomer. Jeff is a member of the Field Application Scientist team at
Revvity Signals.
Prior to joining
Revvity,
Jeff studied physiological science and biomechanics in the University of California Education System. Jeff has 11 years of experience in the biotech industry, performing many different types of in vivo models and ex vivo assays for 4 different biotech companies and UCSF. Then Jeff worked for 11 years as a subject matter expert at an in vivo study management software company, managing customer relationships and assisting in the development of software suite from the scientist's perspective. Thank you so much, Jeff, for joining us. I will present your agenda and hand it over to you.
Oh, thank you very much, and thanks for everybody. Jinsuit is a hard act to follow, but I'm gonna do my best here with the signals inventory. So what I'm gonna do today is show everyone how the signals inventory works and what a container actually looks like and what metadata might be associated with that container and where are they located. Then I'm gonna pivot and show you how you can create these containers and from a couple of different angles. One from an experiment level where you're dealing with samples possibly that you've created, and another from the materials library so that you can actually register those materials that you have in containers within your organization. Then, of course, everyone wants to know, once I create these, how do I find them? So we're gonna move on to being able to search for these using some text and some materials and some filters in there. I will go ahead and show my screen here. If everyone can see my screen, what we're looking at is my dashboard for my Signals notebook. And the way that you locate the inventory portion of Signals notebook is you're going to go to your menu, your name menu over here to the right, drop down and go to the inventory. This is going to open up an entirely new area called Signals Inventory. And you're going to see that there are some inventory items listed already here in the system. I'm going to actually briefly show you how to look for them by location, because this is exactly where you're looking at here. We're going to filter by location. So I'm just going to look for our molecular biology lab and go to the cold room. Yeah, let's just go to the cold room here. Now there are containers in the cold room that I can see. If I were to go to one of those containers, this is a vial of a substance, and we'll go ahead and look at what that substance is. Now the location is listed at the top, and it tells you what each location and sublocation might be. It also tells you what the amount of this material is that's available and what the barcode is. And we'll go ahead and look at some of the metadata associated with this particular container. The properties of each container are listed on the left side. And I do want people to realize that there are some standard fields that are here, but also this can be customized so that you can add other fields that you feel are important to you within what the properties are. Of course, the sample properties are listed here as well. And again, these are depending on the substance or material that you're using, or the sample. Those fields will also be customizable as well. So once I've seen these containers, the container properties and the sample properties, I just want to point out over on the right side, this is where your actionable pieces and buttons might be. When you are using a material, you can check it in and check it out. And once you check out a material, you can say, okay, where is it going to be located? We're going to change this from the cold room to the animal facility. I'm going to take this out. So I'm the one who's checking this out. I'm going to complete the checkout here. So now everyone knows that the amount is available, but I am the one who is using this. And if I look under the container properties, they're going to know that the location of this particular sample happens to be in the animal facility in the mouse room. Okay. To check it back into its final location, I can then go back to putting it into the molecular bio lab, and I'm going to neglect purposefully to not put in a name or an email because no one is going to be have this checked out now. Now, because this is going into a box, and I have a box here that has different locations, I can say I'm going to put this into a location in a grid format, which is kind of nice. So I've now changed it from just a shelf into a box. So putting this, checking it in and out, quite an easy process, but it allows people to know who the current user is. I can also update the amount. So if I use some and then I check it back into its location and I want to update the amount, I now realize that I used a couple of 200 microliters. So let's put in 2.6 mils. So now there's 2.6 mils available. Everything is updated automatically, just as your Signals notebook is online. If I were to have used the entire amount and I wanted to tell people, not that it's just not available, that it's disposed. So I can actually dispose of this particular sample and say it is completely done. Then it will record that the status is disposed of and not just unavailable. And of course, if you need to assign a barcode, you can print a barcode to this particular container. Now, what I'm going to do now that I've explained the containers is I really want to go back to my notebook and say, okay, how did you create these containers, Jeff? So there's a couple of different ways to do it. From an experiment point of view, I'm gonna start with that. When you're in an experiment and you have created a sample, and this sample can be a chemical sample or a tissue sample, it doesn't really matter what it is. From that chemical sample, you can see that we can then go to the left menu in the samples table. Several things that we can do with this, but the one I'm going to focus on is I want to add a container. So I'm going to add a container of the sample to a specific location, and we'll go ahead and put this in our cold room again, and we'll put it on the shelf. You are able to place the amount that you have created, and we'll do, again, 3 mils of whatever this sample is. And with the container types, oops, we'll make a vial. Well, it's not looking for the types yet. All right. So I've created a particular container, of course. Now, when you're in the samples table, a new column will be created here, and it's called containers. And then we can go ahead and look and see what lies in that container. So if I've created a container full of stuff, whatever it happens to be, and I click on that, it's going to show me, okay, this is the sample that I created, and it's under a container, under a bottle here, and the status is available. And then I can do the same things. This is the same feature that we have, but it just happens to be a chemical sample instead of a regular tissue sample or cell sample or whatever it is. So that was how you create a container from an experiment with the samples table. The other way to create a container is from the materials library. Go ahead and go into our materials library here and just start with some of the compounds. So if I said I created this compound, I put it into a vial or something like that, and I needed to store it. So where is it going to go? This compound is registered within the materials library here, and under the assets folder, it has all the information here about this particular compound. But if I click on the batch and look down at the grid down below, you can see that we have, again, lots of information, some metadata about this particular compound, but no one has added any containers yet. So I can click on the Add Containers button. Again, we can do the same sort of, adding a location. We'll go to just the biolab. We'll add 1 gram of this, and we'll put it into a vial here. You can give it an expiration date if you'd like, and then we'll create the container. Once that container has been created, it will, again, open it up, list all of the metadata associated with it. And now when we go back to the compound, I'm going to go ahead and refresh this so we can see that we have actually indeed a new container of that particular material. So now it lists the location so that you will be able to find it very easily. So we just went over a couple of different ways to create these containers of the samples or the materials that you're registering within the Signals notebook. Now what I'd like to do is move to, okay, Jeff, this is great, but if I'm in inventory, how do I find this stuff? So of course at the top we have our icons here. I'm going to go to the search icon, and we're going to go ahead and take a look at a couple of different ways to find your materials in your containers within the inventory section of Signals. The first thing I want to do is just use text. So let's type in acetic acid, and we'll go ahead and take a look. So what we found here under the acetic acid are several batches or lots of materials, and then the asset is the actual material itself. So if you remember from the compounds, we have both the asset and the batch here. That's what it is looking for within. Now I can also, if I wanted to look for a certain CAS number or a barcoded tag, I can use that in the text as well. But another thing that we can do is use the filters to find things. And this is really to narrow down our search. I wanted to look for something that where the material temperature is stored in a freezer. And with that freezer, I want to look for just all the things that are stored maybe in that particular freezer. So I'm going to, in a temperature here, I'm going to look for something between -22 and -18 degrees. Aha. So now I found locations in which I found a location in which all of that material might be stored. So I can use this filter to find things in a location where the temperature is where I want. I'm going to clear this filter here, and let's talk about looking for the status of something. So I'm going to look for an acid. That's really broad, right? So I'm not narrowing this down, but maybe we say, okay, I just want to only look for the acids that are available. So we're going to look for the status of, and what is that status? Is it in use or is it available? Aha. So I'm going to choose available and narrow down my search a little bit more. Now it's possible that I want to say, okay, I'm going to look for this material in a certain amount. So we'll go to material and look for the amount. Sorry, I'm going to change that to amount here. There we go. So I want to know, maybe this amount is going to be, I want something that's more than 10 grams of stuff. Oh my gosh, look at that. I found my acid that's available that has 10 grams, my acetoxybenzoic acid. Perfect. This is exactly what I wanted. So again, from many comes one by using all of these filters. Now, I'm gonna clear this out here once more so that we can take a look at another way of looking for things. Some people might want to find, some of the GHS hazards. So we can take a look at, one of those and see which ones of these have the hazards. But, when an inventory manager is looking for something with a hazard, they're probably looking for its expiration date. So let's try to find on the expiration date what that might be. So if I want to look for something that's going to expire before, let's say, July 30th of this year, I want to make sure that we have that information. Where did it go? Oh, maybe nothing has. Let's do after. Let's try this one here. Oh, just when you thought you had the right the right conditions. It doesn't quite work that way. Let's do the expiration date one more time. I thought this had worked before. Let's do something that's going to expire before the end of the year. Maybe that's better. And we'll find something here. Of course not. When you do these before, you had but anyways, you can see that you will be able to find the expiration dates within the system. All right, I'm going to move on to the last thing, which what I want to do is creating a bookmark. So when you create some of these searches, you say, I might want to look for these things all the time. So we're going to look for a filter called path. Oop. No, that's not what I wanted, path. There we go. And depending on where the location is, you might be able to say, okay, I want to look for everything that's in a particular location. So again, we're going back to our molecular biolab cold room, and you have the shelf here. So if I ever wanted to find something within the cold room and on shelf 2, I want to be able to search for that every time. So when I go to the bookmark tab at the top here, when you add a bookmark, you'll be able to say, okay, what is that bookmark? So this is cold room, oops, shelf 2. I'm going to save that. And so now whenever I want to go to a search and say, okay, I need to find the stuff that is in that particular location, I can go to my bookmark and go to cold room shelf 2 and be able to find all of those particular containers that are there. So hopefully the searching by using the filters, by using the locations, you will be able to locate all of your particular materials and the containers that hold those materials as well. And I guess I'll move on to any questions that we have.
All right, we have a few. So too many to cover in this 5-minute follow-up, but I think we're about to hit the Q&A, so don't worry, you won't be waiting long.
All right.
So, first one, can Signals be connected to a barcode reader? And as a follow-up, can the barcode be read and the associated data automatically pulled up for that container?
That's a great question. The first one I'm going to add a container here. So when you are generating your containers, if you were to enter the barcode, you would scan that barcode and it wouldn't auto-generate a barcode. It would enter that barcode in here. So that barcode would be associated with the container. Then if you were to search for that, you again scan the barcode. The barcode will enter the text to search here. And when you hit the enter button, it will search for that particular container within the, sorry, I don't have a barcode reader connected, but I do know that it works.
Alrighty, so the next one is there a way to see the history of checking in or out and usage of samples in containers just for tracking purposes?
The checking in and out, so each container, go to this. Each container has the check-in and check-out, but I don't think that there's a history of who had it until you get to, I want to say, oh, there's a barcode search here too. I don't think that there is at the moment. I think that's something that there is a history of within each container. But I can't, I'm not sure. I'm going to have to get back to you on that one because I can't remember exactly where it is now. I thought that there was. Let me get back to you on that.
Alrighty. How do you input in locations so that they appear on the drop-down list?
You would add those locations, like your inventory administrator would be able to add those locations in the system configuration portion of it.
Alrighty. Can we use this inventory and consume materials for routine reagents or consumables as well, like salts or solvents?
Absolutely. Absolutely. As a matter of fact, there is a way to be able to order those reagents and keep track of them so that you're just adding in the materials library. If we'll go to the solvents. I thought we had some reagents here. Yeah. You can get into the reagents and then add in the particular, again, the particular lots so that you can continue to use these and then just keep adding containers as such.
Cool. All right. Can you pull up a list of all the contents of a location? So, for example, if you want the inventory of everything stored in a particular freezer.
Absolutely. So one of the things that you can do here is I have this container and it's stored in box 1, but I want to look in the cold room. When you go to a particular location, it does have the containers that are listed in that location, but it also has the sub locations here as well. So in this one, I've got shelf 1, shelf 2, and box 1. So you can see everything that's in all of either listed in all the container itself or the sub locations as well.
Alrighty, I think that's kind of our time for the little mini Q&A session. I'm going to turn things over to Laura to wrap up, and then we will see you all momentarily for our more in-depth Q&A.
Great, thank you both so much. Let me get my screen up for our final slide here. Great, so thank you so much. That concludes our planned presentations for the day. As mentioned before, we have the rest of the time scheduled for open office hours, questions, anything we didn't get to. We are happy to answer now. So whether it's about the presentations, any other kind of outstanding notebook questions you have, this is the time to ask them in the questions box here. Anything we don't get to today, we're happy to follow up offline after the presentation with some answers. But please fill out any questions you have and submit them, and we'll get answered today as many as we can. So with that, I will turn it over to Anne to kind of run through what we have so far in the queue. Anne, take it away.
Alrighty, thanks. So I think first things first, we're going to get to the one that required some clarification for Jensu. So can the different fields have a template mapping for different values in the when importing into the external enumerator? So you don't have to do it on every experiment.
Ah, I see. So if you're doing the same type of thing over and over, can you just have it be like a sticky type of value?
Precisely.
Yeah. And so the answer to that is no, not right now, not right now. I will say that is a feature that is leveraged, like for example, in the materials library. When you do an import in the materials library, it does remember the column matching that you used with a previous either CSV or SD file. But the external enumerator doesn't have that stickiness yet, but certainly something we can explore in terms of making that a feature. Definitely something I will raise.
So one of the questions we had was, I could not find these templates for in my Signals notebook. Where can I get the templates?
Great question. So the parallel experiments by default are turned off. They require a configuration by the administrator, so they have to be activated, and then the templates have to be built. So if you do not have access to parallel experiments, it's because the administrator hasn't set that up. Now, You can either have your administrator go in and do that themselves, or if you are an existing customer with a services agreement, that's a perfect scenario to reach out to our services team and they can help you get that installed.
All right, fantastic. Ooh, can you distinguish between reactants and reagents in your customized view?
That actually is a great question. So from the external enumerator side, no. Now in the internal enumeration, it's very subtle, and I guess really kind of fundamentally the answer there is still no. But you see that in the internal enumerator, you can choose to put reagents either to the left of the arrow or up above it. Now that is generally understood to be either a reactant if it's on the left of the arrow or a reagent over the top. But fundamentally, when they get put in the stoichiometry grid, they just get labeled as reactants, all of them. So not necessarily, but you can build out in the stoichiometry grids, you can build out custom fields for that. So if you would like that level of granularity, it's something that can be built in, again, by your administrator.
All righty. And to a Signals inventory question, is Signals able to automatically update the amount of a sample based on the consumption recorded in experiments across the organization? So I think, for example, if you have an item that's been checked out and is being used in an experiment.
Yeah, not automatically. No, not yet. That will be something obviously for the future that we'll be trying to incorporate, because that certainly makes things easier for the scientists. But yeah, not as of yet.
Ooh, another inventory question. Is it possible to assign several names to a material so that it can be found with all of them?
Several names to a material?
I think this person is referring to something like synonyms.
Yes, that could be under the materials registration. That could be one of the fields is like other names or aliases. Yes.
Does that carry over into searching in inventory as well, or is that an material exclusive feature?
No. It'll carry over into inventory as well.
Great.
I guess one thing that I maybe misspoke about, Signals inventory is part of the Signals notebook. So it is part of the searching and part of the materials library. So anything that you're searching for in the notebook, you can actually search for in the inventory as well.
Ooh, that's a good note. Let's see. It says, I'm going to need a little clarification, Jessica. When you're saying if you view a box location, does it show in the grid view? Jessica, if you could add to the questions, maybe follow up a little bit on what you mean by that. For inventory, has the inventory been validated for use as a sample tracking system with an HTA license?
I think that's more of a question for Anne. I don't know what an HTA license is. I apologize.
Let's see. Susan, why don't you follow up with what an HTA license is, and we can double check that. If not, we'll follow up with an email just to confirm. Let's see. Ooh, are there any tools or shortcuts for uploading information about mini containers and or materials?
There is a bulk importer for the materials, but as of right now, there is no bulk importer for the actual containers themselves. Those have to be created one at a time, and that is because you have an individual barcode associated with each container. Now, if you have a barcode reader, it can be very quick and easy to be able to add those in from the materials. Because you can say, I've got 100 barcodes, and then you can, or 100, samples, and then just add them one at a time. You can add them all with the same material, but the barcodes can be scanned in just one at a time, one after another. that can be very easy. If I can, if you want to put me in on that, you want to share? I'll share my screen. So if the number of containers is more than 1, let's just put 5 here. We'll go to our old system here. I'm just going to put this in. We'll put in different bottles here, okay? Now that I put 5 in, I can't put 5 barcodes in. So when I click next, instead of auto-generating each barcode, I can just uncheck these, and then I can enter in each barcode. So I'll scan the barcode here, scan the barcode here, but all of that, all the containers will contain the same type of material, if that makes sense. Hopefully that answered the question.
Okay, let's see. Oh, another inventory one. Is it possible to get a notification when a stock of a substance is low?
Not yet. Another thing that our users have asked for, that we are definitely thinking about putting in, because that's a pretty common thing.
Let's see. Ooh, can multiple containers be checked in or out together with one or a few clicks? Or do they have to be checked out individually?
Individually.
Okay. So you can't go through and select, like, I need these 4 things for my experiment and check them out.
No, not at the same time. That's correct. You have to do that. You have to do them individually to check them out. Unless they are in the same sort of container within a, you know what I mean? If they're in a container within a location, like in a box or you know, I guess you know, a box would be a good example. You can check out the entire box of samples. That you could do.
Okay. Let's see. Ooh, how do you import an existing inventory into Signals Notebook?
That would be a question for our services department, because you know, our robust APIs are great in terms of being able to interact with other systems, and I'm sure that it is. I'm not 100% positive, but I'm pretty sure that it can be done. But that would be something that we could engage our services department to explore.
All righty. Ooh, when you create a new experiment, can you directly add a certain container from inventory through the quick add? And does it populate those container specific? Does it populate container specific information?
No, you cannot add a container directly. You can add materials and then associate the material with all the information into your experiment. But which specific container you're using, you have to specify. So you'd add the material, all the information comes with it, and then you have to add which container it was, which container of the material.
Okay.
So, Jeff, let me just jump in here real quick, because we very recently made a change, and you can do that now. That is a fairly new feature. If you're in the quick add and you start typing container, it will prompt you to make a selection there, and then it opens the container window where you can just select what you want to add. So that is new. That is new.
Thank you, Jinsu.
All righty, let's see. So when building an inventory, I've seen that cabinets can't be moved to a different location, like from room to room, for example. Is that correct?
There is a fantastic video on setting up your locations and how to plan them out. As far as moving them around, what you can do is, I believe you have to dispose of the cabinet and then relocate everything in the cabinet to the quote unquote new cabinet if you move it from room to room? I'd have to explore that. Nobody's asked that that kind of question before about moving stuff.
Hmm. Let's see. Oh, we've got one for Jinsu. Is the functionality for importing an SD file and it's displaying structures in a table usable elsewhere in the notebook now?
Not currently, not currently. I know that that is a requested feature to be able to use something like an administrator defined table to be able to load in a bunch of structures and just see them. But no, so far currently is still restricted to those R groups. But that particular feature is already on our radar. So it's on our roadmap for development.
Yep. Alrighty, let's see. Checking here. Oh. For inventory, is it also possible to load products from different external suppliers, i.e. same product, same CAS, but for example, different purities?
Are you talking about loading them? Are they talking about loading them into the materials library or into each container? I mean, it is possible to load them into different containers because they will have different properties, you know, different purities there, even if it's the same CAS number. It would just be it would be a different lot or different batch of material.
Okay, so the differentiation would be at the lot or batch number.
Yes, I would think so. Yes.
Okay. Let's see.
And that's at the material level, not at the container level.
Okay. Ooh, if you open a box location like a freezer, does it show you where each material is in the box? So for example, like if you have racks labeled D1, D2, would you be able to see those items in the box?
Yeah, you know, you can set up the freezer as a grid item, and then you can see the locations of the different boxes within that grid. Depending on whether your freezer is a top loading or side loading, then you could, you know, if you have it as a grid, you can have each shelf as a grid as well, or each layer as a grid. So the answer is yes.
Ooh, in inventory, can I add price to each material and check how much I spend on a particular synthetic step or project?
That's interesting. I don't believe the answer is yes. There are certain prices associated with the product numbers, and that could be a field of how much you spent, but I'm not sure about tallying all that up. I suppose, Jinsu, you could probably do that with some sort of admin table. Do you think?
Maybe, yeah, because we do have admin tables that are able to do some level of math. But yeah, it wouldn't, there's nothing that's like out of box. It would require either some level of configuration or customization.
Mm-hmm.
Still a pretty interesting question. Let's see. Ooh, can Signals print barcodes directly to Brother Barcode printers?
Yes, you can print barcodes to any printer. If you want, if you can show my screen, I can show you what a barcode looks like. So when you print the barcode, this is just what it looks like. And if you're going to print it, then you just print it to, you know, whichever printer you would like. And it just, there's the barcode there.
Alrighty, let's see. Ooh, can I add safety pictograms to materials?
Yes.
How would we do that? Get a little more in there.
It's well, no, I mean you're talking about the I think that they Jinsu, you might want to explain this. This is more of a materials thing rather than containers, correct?
Yeah, but so the reagents library natively contains the ability to inherit that level of safety information. So hazard codes, as well as the various pictograms for, you know, things being teratogens or environmental hazards, those types of things, they get assigned to the material itself. And then, as you saw when Jeff created containers from materials, it inherits all of that information. So all of those things will be associated.
Okay. Can new compounds be added by CAS number?
New compounds to the materials library?
I would think so, because you can actually search by CAS number when you're adding things in Quick Add.
Yeah.
So I think the idea is like if I type in the CAS number, will like the material name populate?
Yes.
Okay. Alrighty, let's see. I have a couple of questions from new users that are of the same theme. That's not specific to inventory. So a couple of new users have been asking where they can find some basic tutorial information, particularly like user videos for Signals Notebook.
So the same name menu that I showed in the beginning to go to the inventory at the beginning of my presentation, if you scroll down a little bit, it has FAQs and user videos that you can access. There's lots of great content. The newest content is actually about inventory, which is really good, but then there's some content that they've already put in that's been there for a little bit about the about how to simply use the notebook and pretty easily.
So I think if, is it possible we could share a screen and just kind of show exactly where that is? That would be very helpful for some of our new users, because I know that that is a pretty frequent question, and it's so much easier if you can actually just have a look and see it.
So we have a quick start, under your name menu, there's a quick start guide, a user guide, FAQs, training videos, ChemDraw user guide. There's lots of content that will allow you to help out. This channel has 152 videos for the Signals Notebook user, and there's you could search for something specific that you were looking for within to be trained on.
All righty. And then the other question that I can see a couple of times is, will this session recording be available? And my guess is probably when. So I would ask Lauren, do we know if and when this would be available, where users might be able to refer to this at a later date?
Absolutely, yes. We will make this available. We'll send out an email to everyone who attended and those who missed it, probably within the next week. So look into your inbox for that one, and then we'll look to kind of put these somewhere as well, in case anybody wants to reference them on demand. We'll look into that as well, but definitely via email in the next week or so.
Excellent. I think we have a few more minutes in our Q&A time. There were some requests as to whether or not we could go into biologics. I'm going to defer to you on that. I know that biologics is currently kind of still in development in inventory and materials.
Sorry, I was on mute. The the materials libraries, and I can share my screen again.
So just like a,
Can you see my screen? Sorry.
yes.
So if you were to go into any biologics, I'll just go to the antibodies here. In your materials library, you can access any of the materials that you register within the materials library, and they can be biologics. And then if you were going to go into that, once again, you would just be able to add containers and put them wherever you needed to. So for biologics, this works 100%.
Are we able to see the new DNA constructs?
That is what might be in development. You're right.
Because I know that that's in development and it has appeared, but it is also, I believe it's behind a beta flag still, though I'm not
Oh,
100%.
yeah.
So I think this one should be active. So Jeff, if you scroll
Okay,
up a bit, hit dynamic mode.
There we go.
And so what this does is it opens metadata. So this is a SnapGene file for a plasmid. And what you're seeing on the right side is basically metadata about what's contained in that SnapGene file. So like the specific genes, restriction sites, things like that. And if you click into like the properties tab, there's other metadata that's contained in there. You can search by these metadata as well. Now, in terms of how this translates specifically to a container, that may be in development, like the ability to open the file in this dynamic way from a container. I don't think we're there yet with this, but yeah, this is a fairly new feature, and I think it did, to Anne's point, it did just come off of beta.
So this is the container, and I believe that when you go to the materials properties, you're just going to go to, you know, what this substance is, and open it up as a material, not as a container. So it is accessible from the containers, but it's not, you know, it just shows the image here. You would have to then go to the actual material instead of doing this from the container. At the moment. But that's a good question. I mean, you know, for the people that are using biologics, can you use inventory? And the answer is yes.
And I think the follow-up answer is and that experience is only going to improve because there's a good bit of things that are in development as we expand our biologics functionality. Let's see. Oh, I have a couple more label printing questions. So the first is, does Signals Notebook have the ability to print 2D barcodes also? And as a related question, can you also create and print labels with more or other information than just the barcode? So for example, like name and structure, is that possible as well?
The 2D, I believe is in development, but it's not available at the moment. I think it's on the roadmap. The structure, I don't know, Jinsu, do you know if you can print the labels with the structure and the barcode on it? I don't think you can.
You can change to some varying degree what you see, but you don't have the ability to choose which fields you're going to see. So if you, for example, print barcode here, if you choose a different format, you're going to get different metadata around this particular barcode. See, so now you have a CAS number a lot. If you choose one of the other formats, you might get even a different view, but you cannot configure which things turn up on this label currently. It is a requested feature, so potentially on our roadmap for development. I don't know where that would sit though.
Alrighty. Let's see. I'm checking to see. I think we've got most of the questions answered. There are a few that are going to be a bit more involved, and so they should have written responses at a certain point. Ooh, found one. How can we assign an ID for equipment? So tables including calibration dates, etc., are auto-populated in an experiment.
Great question. In the materials library, we do have you can put a place for equipment, and depending on what the equipment is, we'll just go to this HPLC. You could, it doesn't have to say lot. This could be, the certain serial number or batch number or whatever it happens to be. But the serial number would be here, and then you could put calibration dates in there and maintenance dates. Again, if you remember, all of these column headers can be customized for each piece of, for each material itself, so that, if you created a material assessment for equipment, then all of that information, all of this information here would be available to have customized. Then within the notebook itself, if you had if you added a materials table and it was an equipment table, then you would be able to see what kind of equipment you were using. So again, here's the equipment here, and you have your columns within the experiment. And if you were to highlight each piece, it would give you the image and the other metadata associated with that piece of equipment.
Alrighty, we've got a couple more label ones. Is the admin able to kind of customize the label? So will the admin or end user be able to define what's included on the label and possibly even label size?
Yeah, as Jinsu said, that is something that has been asked of us, and I don't know where it is in terms of in the roadmap and the scheduled updates for this.
Okay. And I think that is all of the questions. I think that's all of the questions. If there are any last ones, be sure to get them into the questions box. I think we're in our, last 5 minutes?
Anything too, Anne, that we can't get around to today, we're more than happy to follow up afterwards as well.
Yes, of course. So that's the other thing. So if there's a couple of items that need additional follow-up, I'm thinking of a couple of the questions. They've been flagged for follow-up, so we will be getting to any of those questions later. And if you have any questions that we haven't gotten to yet, we can follow up with those after the presentation.
Perfect, thank you. So thank you everyone for joining us today for our first Signals Notebook Quarterly Connect Community Series. Our next session is August 24th. We hope you can join us. Just a reminder, you're already registered for the series, so no need to re-register for the upcoming sessions. You are already registered. In between sessions, you can always stay up to date on Signals Notebook new features and functionality via our What's New section of the site, as well as we have email communications around those What's New. Those go out monthly. Thank you all so much to our speakers for sharing great insights in your presentations, and thank you so much, Anne, for the great Q&A sessions. We will address the pending questions in the upcoming days, and as well as the ones that need that additional follow-up, as well as sharing the presentation in the next few days as well. Again, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. Have a great rest of your day, and looking forward to seeing you all on our upcoming sessions. With that, we will conclude. So thank you so much.